everyone, and welcome to the first official Game Like Training certification. Firstly, very excited to have you all here. And the reason that we're excited is because your attendance gives us the opportunity to address an issue that we have been trying to address for about a decade now. So myself, Matthew and Eric, the three of us, we founded this business to really answer one question. How do I take my range game to the golf course? We could see from our experience in the golf industry that there was a number of players that were caused great frustration by their ability to hit the ball well on the golf range, and then when they went to the golf course, performance became a lot lower. So myself and Matthew initially, and then Eric joined the mission, we wanted to answer the question, why is this, and how can we help golfers take their range game to the course? Now, I want to make absolutely one thing clear. I am not a professional golfer, nor am I a PhD, a researcher, or a sports psychologist. I'm actually a collegiate level rugby player who studied sport and exercise psychology, studied economics, and studied sports coaching. And when my collegiate rugby career finished, I took up golf. I was a 3-4 handicapper at golf, and I absolutely loved to compete on the golf course. I am also not a PGA professional. I don't really understand or have an eye for the golf swing. I don't really have that much of an interest in technique. I do value it, and I understand that there's a certain level of technical proficiency that players need to increase performance. But I don't read about forces and torques. I don't know that much about ground pressures. I literally have an eclectic background in sport and human performance, and it evolved into this obsession of how can I take my range game to the golf course. So my point to this introduction is I cannot do what a majority of you guys in the room do. I cannot help players necessarily change their golf swing for more desirable mechanics. But I do believe what I can do is help golfers practice or train in a way that leads to, number one, retention of skills, so golf swing change is sticking, and number two, transfer of skills, ability to take that performance from practice onto the golf course and into competition. So I hope today when we put this information across that we can synergize. This isn't about you taking away the Game Like Training philosophy and applying it. This is about you understanding what we're trying to do, the questions we're trying to answer, and the practical solutions we're coming up with. And then I would love it to be a two-way dialogue. So just as much as you guys want to learn from today, we want to learn from you. So let's make this a two-way thing and have some great discussions on all aspects of golfing performance. So that's ultimately what Game Like Training is. It's helping players to think and practice in a way that will help them take their range game to the golf course. So around a decade ago, myself and Matthew, we started to dive into the research on human performance, the science of learning, and sports psychology. And we looked at books like the Cambridge Handbook of Expertise and Expert Performance by Dr. Erickson. We also looked at many research papers that have been published from reputable universities all around the world. And this was not easy. They are not not good reading. They are not fun to read. But what they do is they give us evidence that we can then build our coaching philosophies from. Now, we found in the golf industry that a majority of coaches didn't have access to this education, or they didn't necessarily desire to read this education because it was quite demanding. The way that it's written, it's not very digestible. And in some instances, it's not very practical. You can't necessarily, doesn't give you a specific way to apply it into your coaching. So at Game Like Training, what we wanted to do was we wanted to take the academic world, make it accessible, digestible, and practical for you, for the golf coach. And we felt that if we could do that, we could start to help players change their psychological habits and their practice habits. And this would happen. The academic world, the golf coach, and the end user, the student, would all begin to synergize. Because currently there's a bit of a disconnect. So that's what we want to achieve today. Right now, this disconnect exists because the golf range, as we can see from this picture, very nice, very neat, very tidy, but it's completely different to the environment that you're going to go and play golf on. So ultimately, myself and Matthew and then Eric, we concluded if we wanted to help golfers take their range game to the course, people are going to have to start to think differently and train differently. And then potentially, we can close that gap. So that's what we're here to do today. We may challenge some of your underlying beliefs. We may disagree with some of the practices that you're currently putting into place. But that's great, that's healthy, that's what we want. And don't hold back, don't keep it all bottled up and leave. Let's have great open discussion about how players are currently thinking, how players are currently training, and how we can improve their practices. And again, I want to stress, I'm not a golf coach. I'm a performance coach with this eclectic background that's developed this passion to help golfers take their range game to the course. So I see the world from my paradigm, completely different to most of you guys here. How many golf coaches do we have in the audience? Cool, so if we have about 36 here, looks like 28, 29 coaches, and the rest players. So we're gonna challenge your underlying beliefs, but I am not you and you are not me. That's fine. That's what we want. We want to create this healthy environment where we can end up sharing best practice. So please put your hands up. Don't just listen to me speak. Ask questions. So to start, I'll pick a volunteer. Who can do this maths quiz? Okay. What's 25 add 25? Yep, 50. What's 25 add 25? Yep. What's 25 add 25? Yep. What's 25 add 25? Yep. What's 25 add 25? Okay. What's 25 add 25? Okay, good. How hard was that maths lesson? Yeah, exactly. Not very. Do you have children? If your kids went to maths class and a teacher gave them that, would you think that was a good maths lesson? No, exactly. So, but they're getting their reps in. They're getting their reps in. We just did repetition. How much learning came from that repetition? Exactly. Repetition is a myth. It is not a way to learn, and it's not deliberate practice. Repetition will not lead to retention of skill, nor will it lead to transfer of skill. So, at Game Like Training, we have created a definition for golfing skill. And golfing skill can only be classed as learned when it's retained over time and transferred into multiple environments. So go back to the maths lesson, that was very blocked, there was repetition, but not much learning was being done. That is very representative of how players are practicing. You know, I spoke about the golf range, and you've seen this slide already. Spoke about the golf range being very neat, very tidy. Some would say brand standards are high, and at high-end courses they take a lot of pride in setting their range up. But unfortunately, the golf range, it's not a mecca for learning. This environment leads to us having a practice experience much like the maths lesson that I just gave. That leads to the brain disengaging, it leads to non-optimal learning, and a lot of the time players, they've pulled their favourite club, they're hitting the same shot down the range, and they get it. Oh, I've got it. But that's an illusion of competence. It's false competence because there's no variability in the task. So ultimately the golf range, it doesn't provide us what we need to learn. What it does provide us is convenience. I always compare the golf range to Uber. Uber is popular because of convenience. People want to take Uber because of convenience. I've had Ubers turn up that are Toyota Prius, the number plate's falling off, they're not very clean on the inside, and I never complain. I never complain because it was convenient. And in 2019, that's what we want. We want convenience, because one of the most important things in our life is time. Time is a really scarce commodity in 2019. So what does the golf range do? It saves us time. So the golf range is very much like Uber. It's there because it's convenient and it's not going anywhere. And at Game Like Training, we get that. We get that the golf range is here to stay. So then we ask the question, how can we use the golf range more effectively? How can we create this? How can we create a synergy from the golf range to the golf course? And our decade of learning boils it down to really 3 points. And this is probably one of the most important takeaways that you'll get from the seminar this morning. So, a learning environment is created through these 3 things. They are spacing, variability, and challenge. So, let's compare these to the golf range. So if we look at the spacing effect first. The spacing is ultimately how much time between each learning trial is a golfer putting in, or how much time between each shot is present in this golfer's practice. The more space, the more we learn. Because ultimately space keeps the brain engaged. Now what you see on the golf range a lot of the time is this. So rake and hit, rake and hit. And again, it's part of the pyramids there. I mean, some golf ranges, the ball even comes up from the floor for you. You don't have to bend down and pick it up. The ball will just come up on the tee, you don't even have to move, and you can just stand there all day. But there's zero space between those shots. Now, if there was 20, 30, 40 seconds between each one of those golf balls, what would happen is the brain would want to solve the puzzle of hitting the next shot. So we've just hit a shot, we've had to wait 30, 40 seconds, the brain's like, okay, the last rep wasn't so good. What do I need to change? Or it might be the last shot was very successful. What did I do again? And your working memory is challenged. So the spacing effect, adding space between each rep, challenges the working memory and it induces deeper learning. The variability effect is quite simply the changing of task. So again, on the golf range, most players, they pull their favorite club and they hit, and they hit, and they hit. quite simply, if we had the golf bag back there and they had to change club every time, and maybe even if they did it driver, go change to an iron, go change to a pitch, and then go back round to the driver, we're starting to simulate golf more. Also, variability can come in changing of task. So you might hit to the right target, then the left target, and then the center target. Really simple. So that's spacing and variability. Now, increasing spacing and increasing variability in turn increases the challenge point. So the golfer that doesn't change club and has no space between their shot and just hits, very, very low challenge. A golfer that waits 30-40 seconds between balls, higher challenge. A golfer that waits 30-40 seconds between balls, changes target every time and changes club every time, variability increases again. A golfer that might change bay, or if it's a grass range, try and go to the front of the range and hit off a down slope, variability increasing even further, therefore the challenge increasing even further. And what these things induce, spacing, variability, and challenge, is cognitive stress. And cognitive stress has to be present if we want to learn. Doing this, after about 4 or 5 balls, cognitive stress is really low, and ultimately what you're doing, at best, is a mild physical workout. So, the scientific term and the research, they term this synaptogenesis. So cognitive stress creates synaptogenesis. And what that ultimately is, as shown by this slide, is the firing and wiring of your brain. So if you have spacing, variability, and challenge present in your practice, synaptogenesis is taking place. The brain is firing, the synapses are connecting, forming new neural pathways, and it's those new neural pathways that then can change our movements. And that's a really, really simple analysis of what synaptogenesis is. Matthew knows a lot more about this, and he will speak when we go outside and do the practical session with Matthew. He will speak in more detail on this. And for those of you that are watching this via online certification, we'll have some bonus footage with Matthew talking about synaptogenesis. But ultimately, to recap very quickly, spacing, variability, and challenge have to be present in practice because they create synaptogenesis, and it's synaptogenesis that helps us learn, that can help change a movement pattern. That's how we can induce deeper learning. So, how do we get synaptogenesis to happen, or how do we add spacing, variability, and challenge into golf, and why? Well, ultimately, the golf swing is a movement. And there's a misconception in golf. If you want to change a movement, you have to get your reps in. And that's not the case. We are not getting reps in, and we are not trying to build muscle memory. Muscle memory does not exist. Your muscles do not have memory. What we're trying to induce is deeper learning through synaptogenesis. And we're trying to build what's called a generalized motor pattern. We're not building a repeatable swing that's exactly the same on every shot, nor are we building a different motor pattern for every single challenge that we face in golf. Golf is all about adaptation, adapting to the demands of the environment and adapting to the psychological stresses that the golf course can throw your way. So, through synaptogenesis and adding spacing, variability, and challenge into our practice, when we're training, if our goal is to change our swing, we're looking at building a generalized motor pattern that can then be adapted, much like you see on this slide. We've got Ricky Fowler hitting off the center of the fairway. We've then got someone hitting out of the rough, then Spieth with a putt. Now Adam Scott with a longer club, Dustin Johnson chipping out from behind a tree, and Rory McIlroy playing a bunker. What they are doing is they are taking their generalized motor pattern, their generalized movement, and adapting it to the context of the golf course. So, how do we build those generalized motor patterns? Again, we do not get our reps in and we do not build muscle memory. In golf, one of the questions that should be asked every time a golfer goes to practice is, am I training to learn or am I training to perform? If a golfer is training to learn, if they want to make a change to their movement, if they're training to try and make a change to their generalized motor pattern, then that would be classed as training to learn. So if we're not going to get our reps in, how? How do golfers go about changing their motor pattern? If it's not about muscle memory and not about getting reps in, what is it about? Well, I've said it already, it's about spacing, variability and challenge. So you can see on this slide, we have a mirror, a medicine ball, a hula hoop and a net. So students that we work with, if they are in a technical circuit, or training to learn as we like to call it, the setup would increase spacing and increase variability. So what we would have a student work on maybe, and look, this is complete generalization. It obviously depends on the individual, what they're working on, their background. It depends on multiple factors, but this is just a real basic overview of what a training to learn circuit could look like. So they might have a medicine ball, and what we would say is it's 5 medicine smashes into the ground and into the wall. Once they've done those 5, it's then the hula hoop, and they're moving the hula hoop around them, working on movement, working on plane of the swing. Then they might go to the mirror. Now they can get some different kind of feedback. Hula hoop provides a bit more feel. The mirror going to provide a bit more visual feedback. And they would make some slow motion swings trying to hit positions. And then they would go to the net and they might hit 5 balls in the net. And then they would repeat. Very, very basic, but what we're doing is we're changing tasks. So I see on the Golf Channel a lot, I see, hey, if you want to get more speed on your downswing, then you've got to get the club in this position or wrist in, you've got to rip through and do this. This is the drill for you. And then the people that are watching the Golf Channel are going to be like, yeah, that's what I want. I need to get more open and I need to get more speed. That's the drill. And the danger with that message is that person's belief will be, I got to go and get my reps in. So they might go to the range, do 1,000 of these drills, hit 1,000 balls, and retention of skill is going to be extremely low. There might be some change in the short term, but the actual retention is going to be low. By training this way, by putting the message across, if the Golf Channel said, hey, this is the drill for you, but do 5 of this drill, take a break, hit a shot at the target, do some medicine ball smashes, and then come back and do 5 of this drill, the retention, the learning would be way higher because we're changing task, variability creates cognitive stress, synapses will be firing, and spacing, more spacing. So we have to think, when we've been through every station and we come back to station 1, lots of space since we last did that. So we ask ourselves, how was I successful at this last time? And we start to recall pictures and feelings, and again, cognitive stress that fires the synapses. So I do believe there are a place for drills in practice. I think conceptually they help people, but ultimately you can't just go and drill it and then you're going to make that change. You have to do it. If you're training to learn, you have to do it in an environment like this where you're changing stations, changing drill, changing task. You have to do it in this environment if you want to retain that movement pattern, if you want to retain what you're learning over a long period of time.
Another special thanks to our sponsor, Gravity Fit, for helping us put on this event. 3 main reasons why you should purchase a Gravity Fit are: it's based on science and research, it helps activate the deep muscle system, and it absolutely helps players improve their golf swings and improve their performance out on the golf course. To find out more, visit www.gltgolfstore.com to purchase yours, or get in contact with GLT friend and partner, Zach Parker. His email is below.
So that is ultimately how we can build a generalized motor pattern.